Okay, now let's see what he has to say, and we are going to stop and discuss one by one.
About what sort of tonally what I wanted to end with. And I had this line in mind. It was that sort of strangely bittersweet connection between the ancient past and what the future was going to bring.
Yay. He's my favorite author.
I think my approach to writing Horus over the many years of the Horus Heresy, in some respects, hasn't changed at all, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a consistent character that you've got to be true to. But there is a huge development, because when I wrote Horus Rising all those years ago...
One of the best books from the Horus Heresy that I've personally read, by the way. It was really impressive, especially the journey of Horus, how he really went from being good to being bad, and circumstances and the irony of his own ego against the ego of the Emperor. It was really amazing and profound.
It was, as it were, a good Horus. It was pre-fall Horus. It was the uncorrupted version, and I put a lot of effort into trying showing him as the admirable person whose loss was a huge tragedy. By the time we reach the end, it's a matter of showing what he has become. It was an interesting balance to write a completely different version of the character, yet keep that spirit, that personality that we admired in the beginning. And
that's very important for every character. It's the consistency, and by the way, amazing cover. And at least in the end of the Dev volume, 1 and 2, especially 2, because we get a lot of Horus. I'm just mind blown by the way that he's written and how he interacts with Sanguinius and what is his mindset during this whole battle. It's just, yeah.
Show it transformed into this thing that was becoming so very, very dangerous. Writing the Emperor is certainly one of the biggest challenges of these books, because the Emperor, by his very nature, doesn't ever really take the center stage himself. He is a presence in the background, in the scenery, and that obviously was a huge technical challenge in this book, because the end of the story is principally about 3 characters. It's about the Emperor, Horus, and Sanguinius. So he had to be present, because he has to become an active character for the first time in the story in a really major way.
Okay, that is extremely important, guys. I want to pay attention to that, because as he said, the Emperor was never like a character, and I really wanted to see that. I really want to see him speak, and I always imagined that that would be extremely difficult, because he is such a figure that we can't even really like grasp, and for such a figure to actually speak, it's groundbreaking. And you do see that he did that. He did spoke obviously to Malcador through the thousands of years that he known him, and to other people as well, his primarchs. He had a relationship with them. So how does this look like? How is the Emperor in person? And we got a really good glimpse of that in the End and the Death volume 2, when he was speaking to the other perpetual and his companions, when he spoke to the corpse basically of this custody. And I was like, oh, in this moment, if I can visualize also this moment of the book in the future, I would, because it is one of the best moments that we ever had with the Emperor, and we really saw that actually he has a good side to him. And then in the end of everything, he wants to restore humanity to not only a previous glory, but to a lot better world. And in order for him to do that, he has to do a lot of questionable things from the outside perspective. And he was questioned in this, but he stood his ground, and he actually made the ultimate sacrifice, giving up his godhood and still remaining the emperor of mankind in his human form. And then, of course, we learned about the Star Child and how he separated all of his good qualities and just send those into the ether, so they will not interfere when he fights Horus. So that was absolutely amazing. That to me is absolute proof that the Emperor actually, finally, is confirmed to be not as bad as I thought, because really what we saw thus far did prove like full-heartedly that the Emperor is not a good guy. But the way that this is kind of retconned and explained here makes a ton of sense. Just that we had just this outside perspective of how the emperor is as a king and a person, and that is how it was throughout a lot of novels. But now we are getting a glimpse with volume 2, and now with volume 3 we are going to get a lot more of how the emperor really is from first-hand experience. So that's gonna be amazing. I already talked about that, so we're not going to linger upon that a lot. You have to go and see my other analysis of the End of the Dead, the End of the Dead part 2, and what I talked about concerning the Emperor and his nature. It is extremely interesting, but let's continue.
And I played with that for a long time, and it was really, really difficult. And we eventually decided collectively, working with Games Workshop, that actually the best way to do that was to have him there, but to only see him through others. So we hear him speak, we understand things, but we don't ever get things from his point of view. And the Emperor is essentially witnessed. His actions are seen from the point of view of those he is interacting with, which creates and maintains that necessary distance. The battle between Horus and the Emperor is obviously the biggest duel in the canon. It's the biggest thing that ever happens in 40k. It's got to be stupendously epic. And there is the added complication, of course, that people, generally speaking, will know what the ending is going to be. So to find the drama, to me, the secret was to concern ourselves more with what the fight was actually like, rather than what the outcome of the fight was, which meant looking at the characters in terms of their strengths. How do they fight? How do they take on an opponent? So ultimately what you get is this huge scale fight that could only take place between these characters. So there is a huge momentum. There is one particular sequence in the fight which I particularly love, where we're switching between them doing to each other these extraordinarily clever, devious, cunning, lethal things.
Absolutely stupendous. As he said, I just cannot wait. I'm already imagining this.
They're just happening really, really fast to show how extraordinarily capable both of them are. And to me, that's the importance of showing this. I wanted to show what it was actually like to be in the middle of that and to see what these two warriors would do when put to this ultimate test. When you're writing a series, and indeed a big end novel like that, with so many characters in play, it's quite difficult to pick favourites. The one that was a real surprise to me was Malcador, because Malcador, for such an important character, he's not had a great deal of screen time in the series as a.
Oh yes, yes, and what he says in the end of in the Death Volume 2 is absolutely profound as well. He gives us all the clues that we need and directly says how the Emperor is as a person, and confirms that he actually was never evil or anything like that. He just wants to do the best, and he is just as flawed as any human, unfortunately, and he still hasn't gotten around that despite his physical and other powers. Yeah.
Whole. He has a lot in the final book, and he has a lot in a very particularly specific way, because he's got the greatest perspective over everything, even if it is very biased. He was delightful to write, but really difficult to sort of work out what he could and couldn't know, what he could say and what he wouldn't say.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, through Malcador, you can actually confirm how the Emperor came to be in the first place, because he must know. Now, a lot of channels, 40k channels, I saw that they are going with the theory that he is created by 1,000 shaman sacrifice, but that is yet to be like truly canon. Maybe it's accepted for now that is his origin, but I'm sure that in the future there just has to be some kind of a confirmation or denial of this, because it's not like set in stone. And he must know stuff, so he can totally spoil a lot only through Malcador. But it's really fascinating that through Malcador we see that the Emperor is capable of absolutely and truly selfless friendship and love that we can only see through, well, true family. And although they are not blood, the Emperor and Malcador are just absolutely amazing. Malcador will do anything, and he did anything and everything for the Emperor and for the Imperium, and he truly believed that what the Emperor wanted to do is justified, and he's not bad and he's not evil. So yeah, I mean, Games Workshop really written the Emperor going into the route of, well, he is just comparable to Chaos, but now they're trying to change that with logical logical storytelling, and for me it's just profound because I am never going to root for someone to be evil or not evil. I just want things to make freaking sense and for us to have deep and compelling characters, and from 40k we can expect one of the deepest and most compelling and unique characters from any universe. So the more a character is so complex and interesting with such a rich history, especially if he lived for thousands of years like the Emperor and Malcador, the more it's complicated to write and to really give us substance. So I understand from a writer standpoint that to write these characters is an absolute feat, and to listen to the audiobook, the second one especially, and how Malcador spoke with such fondliness, what's the word for that? Admiration, and a lot of other things about the Emperor. And then to hear the Emperor, how he thought about giving up his godhood, and how he did listen to this perpetual old friend and his reasoning. He was like, oh, okay, I was wrong, I'm just gonna give this power then. I don't want the whole universe and the humanity to be destroyed because of this, because I'm going to lose myself in this with this power. I'm not gonna be myself anyway. Of course, he did not say that. I'm paraphrasing what everything that he did and said meant. But the point is, it's profound, it's deep, it's what I love 40k for. It's amazing. Okay, let's continue.
But he was a really important character to write, and I found myself becoming increasingly fond of him and his terrible suffering that he was going through. I think I was in a state of shock, actually, when I finally sent the manuscript in. It had been such a stupendously huge thing to work on. It is a massive book. It had taken me over the best part of 2 years to write. I sort of couldn't believe I'd got to the end, that I'd said everything I was going to say, that I'd reached the final line that had been in my mind for a while, that I ticked off everything that I was going to include, that I'd covered everything. And that just didn't apply to the novel itself, but it applied to the whole series. To actually get there and accomplish something I'd imagined 20 years earlier was a really strange feeling, and a sort of sadness. Usually when I finish a novel, I'm pleased with it, but I'm sort of glad to see the back of it. But with this, there was a great sense of loss. I sent it in and going, I just would like to be able to write some more of that now. Actually, I count myself as one of the survivors at the end of the book. Do you know what I mean? Just wandering around in the dust going, what the hell happened? I finished The End of the Death, the writing of it, over a year ago. So since then, I've written another novel. It's a 40k novel. It's connected to one of my sort of ongoing series, and was a very enjoyable, refreshing change of pace of this sheer epic scale. Writing something immediately after The End of the Death was sort of vital to keep me sane, because it was such a gaping hole in where my imagination was working. As for the Horus Heresy, I could imagine myself returning to it as a setting and tell stories that happened during the Heresy, with some nods to the relevance of what's going on as a bigger picture, but not to focus on the big players, to see what happens to other people in the universe at that point.
Okay, me personally, guys, if it's not a compelling story, may as well be, but I'm not personally interested that much of side characters. 40k has too many characters as it is, with good reason, but the Primarchs, the Emperor, Malcador, and okay, let's say Eisenhorn, you know, some of the other characters, they're really what is the meat of 40k, and of course some of the main Astartes, chapter masters, and so on, the greater warriors in the Astartes ranks. Those are the ones that really interest me. Maybe some of the Eldar that are mostly, you know, famous for some reason. There's some compelling features of the Tau and some characters there, but really, I'm mostly interested in humanity and the Emperor and the Primarchs, because all the meaning and different things that you can literally analyze, food for thought, everything that happens that is fascinating, whatever you can call it, that is higher than just interesting, is there. It's not really in the other races. Other races, you could say for instance, well, cool and all. I'm very interested in the Necrons and their journey, because their fate also proves how someone shouldn't be. I mean, there are some moral of the story here and there. There's some interesting side human characters that I have paid attention to while listening to both the 40k newer books and the Horus Heresy books. But throughout all, you can just take a Primarch like Fulgrim and make an amazing revelations about his character and why he did what he did and the circumstances that he was in and everything that transpired. It's just so fascinating. You can't actually do that with everything in 40k. And to me, what is meaningful, it is what is most valuable and worth paying attention to because it does develop your thought process. It has a very big value on anyone's intelligence, really, if you don't just glance over things, but you actually try to appreciate them more by acknowledging that they're deeper than they actually look. They're cool, of course, but it is absolutely more cool when you have a very compelling and deep story and characters, along with the coolest and uniqueness of it all, which you have coolest, very cool and unique things with all the races of 40k and their unique lore and story, but you don't always have the depth. So I don't know if it's not really connected to the main storyline. It's gonna be like Star Wars Visions or something, which that's not canon, but still, separate stories somewhere in the universe, like someone had a back pain or something. Like, I don't really care about that. You have to really write it very, very compellingly. Otherwise, I'm like, eh. Or just, tell us something more about the freaking gods and how they operate. Think, I mean, we know about that, but the deep dive that's gonna be more interesting overall and fascinating. That's always worth it to me to see.
People love it. People play in it. People build their armies in it. It's got its own feeling to it. So that's something I'd very much like to do.
Okay, so we are waiting for this, guys. Of course, I'm gonna get the book as soon as it releases on an audio form because that's the only way that I can consume these books. I don't have the physical time to sit and read, but I can listen and record some moments, see where I am, and see what's important. I was very surprised that the end and the Dead Volume 2 was very, very focused. It didn't go so much into the filler part of some of the 40k books in general or 30k books. They have this problem where you see a ton of filler. The only book, The Emperor of Mankind, that is a part of this series, had a ton of filler and not enough of the Emperor. I was pretty damn disappointed with this book. But now, Volume 2 gave me a lot more that I was expecting, and as it should be. I know that it's hard to write, as he said, but it's a must because then you have pure gold, which is going to be there for generations that also are going to be discovering 40k, 30k someday and learning about these absolutely unique characters and universes. And I do know that maybe some of you will say that the Emperor of Mankind is similar to the Dune Emperor and I don't know who else Emperor, but he actually is not. I mean, obviously there are some similarities there, just the word Emperor, but there's a lot more similarities, with other characters in other universes than there is with those two, because the Emperor from Dune and this Emperor, they're just like worlds apart in terms of powers, how they operate and what they do. I mean, yeah, they have some similar clairvoyancy, let's say, but other than that, really, I actually did a comparison like a year ago between the two. That video is somewhere around the channel in my 40k list if you're interested. But yeah, guys, I just love how Dan explains everything because it's amazing. It is a lot better to see how an author explains everything, how they are building this world, and how he has to confer with other authors because there are a lot of others that are working on this universe, and there's a lot of things, moving pieces and characters that they have to keep track of. And it's very interesting how they already figured out how the world works and how the gods work. He said that they are not actual gods. We talked about this before as well. Um, even if they're not writing these things that they figured out, but based on them, they're using them as points so they can write everything that we thus see. So it's like a picture. Let's say you see a picture this big, and there's like so much more like on the outside, but you don't see that part. You see only the inside. But the authors, they see all the other things that are not visible to us, and they write based upon them. So it's so fascinating. I love it, guys. It is totally a passion of mine to think about these things and analyze them and just discover different stuff. Now, guys, if you are human and and you have some interest to improve your physical health, body and mind, and you have some kind of a need of a help when it comes to intimate relationships, I use actually OnlyFans for a platform because it allows me to upload whatever, and without censorship. But I don't need that part, just need a place where I can exclusively upload content that will help anyone really to become a better version of themselves. And if that means to better your relationships, that is something that I do as a professional, also dietitian, fitness coach, life coach, and so on. So if you're interested, the link is down below. I wish you all a very happy new year, and hopefully you're going to get a lot of cool Warhammer things. And if you have something that Henry Cavill wants to tell us, actually I'm working on a video about that still. But yeah, I'm working on a video that's kind of connected to the Henry Cavill news. So hopefully we can see that soon. I mean, I'm telling that to myself. And of course, I'm also working on the Sanguinius versus Horus part 6 now, and I do plan when I finish that, hopefully, the whole battle between Sanguinius and Horus, I'm going to make it in a whole movie. Because when you connect all the parts, it's gonna be at least 30-40 minutes, maybe more. It's gonna be pretty epic. So yeah, guys, you can do that. You can become also a member of the channel, become an Astartes, an Astra Militarum, a Primarch, whatever you wish to support the channel. PayPal for other types of wishes for me to review movies, live, and whatever. Really, guys, it's there. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about The End and the Death, Volume 1, 2. Who's your favorite 40k author? And let us all look for the amazing The End and the Death, Volume 3. Thank you guys in the chat. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a good night. See you soon.